Hey, J-Bo Nation! Shaming of Jay. He's not a dopey dumb bitch. He gets laid. The court jester. The court DJ. It's time to dive into the case. To the case. All right. What is up? Welcome back. What's up, Jay? How was lunch? Yeah.
Good. How about you?
Never left this seat. So, I mean, you know, it was a short lunch break, you know, it really was. So, I mean, we're about to get in the shit. We're like knee deep in the shit. And at least one portion, I'm going to let some people start getting back in here before. So you keep an eye on live court, please. And thank you. I think I've got it lined up where I want to play that portion, which you consider to be a mic drop, which I agree with. True or not true? Like just for appearance sake, you know, without knowing context. Is it like, is he saying, hey, make sure you remind him that O'Keefe wasn't that the guy wasn't in the house? Or is it like, I mean, it can be construed a lot of different ways, right? I mean, that's how words are, you know, words can be construed in many, many different ways, but it puts it out there. It puts it out there in probably the most concrete way possible at this point that, hey, for the jury's like, what the fuck? You know, like this is the first kind of like what the fuck moment where the jurors might be like, what is like, okay, I get that this was a shitty investigation, but like, why is this dude, number one, listening to an interview of another witness? And why is he reporting back on it? And why does it appear that they're trying to get their story straight with Chris Albert on there, dude? It's like
it's exactly, to me, it can be construed as reasonable doubt. Like, I just can't imagine there's not one juror who's gonna be like, just for this reason, that they're messaging each other. It's just another, and again, we haven't got to Jen McCabe yet, who is getting screenshots from people before that. Like, this is all like, again, and like you said, Bob, it's like, it doesn't matter what, if he's telling, that's fine. It doesn't matter. It's just an awful look. There's no, I mean, it's a lot to go, but to me, there's no way based on that they get 12 people to say absolutely this is murder and that she's guilty of it. It's too much. It's too much, and we haven't even got into the Google searches. We haven't even got into more of like messages that were deleted and call like,
dude, like we're just scratching the surface here. You know what I mean? It's like, and look, they don't have any of this shit if the feds don't do that investigation.
Right.
That's the reality. Like none of this exists in the world, which again, like all we're trying to get here for John O'Keefe and his family that has gone through so much is the truth, or as close as we can get to the truth, you know? And like, I've always been of the mindset, you know, coming from the defense side of it, it's like, when a judge is blocking us from getting things in that we believe can help root out the truth, it's incredibly frustrating.
Right.
And Bev leading up to like, but for the Fed investigation, they never see any of this shit ever.
Right.
And she just wasn't allowing it. Like she allowed for, because remember, Jen McCabe gave her phone over willingly. And then they went in and they kept arguing and arguing and arguing. They finally got Bev to capitulate and give them like a very narrow time frame of Brian Albert Sr.'s, like his text messages, like, or his phone data from like a very short time frame. Welcome back, everybody.
Sunny is coming back. She just has, she'll be here, guys.
She will be. I sent her the invite. She'll pop in as soon as she comes in. I will add her. So Jay, let's just go ahead. And do you know, will this just pick up on the same stream we were watching, or will it be a new one for them as well? Do you know?
What do you mean, like
the
one that you had up?
Yeah, will it be
should be the same one? It should be the same. Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to throw this up, and this is the particular area that we're talking about, which Jay and I both think this is quite a little mic drop scenario. Let's revisit it.
Eddie.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. McCabe, when we broke, I was just about to ask you about the last exchange here. You will agree with me that on February 1st of 2022 at 12:51 and 49 seconds, you texted the group chat to say, ask Chris to ask some questions, correct?
Yep, I'm reading it right now. Yes, that's correct.
And who was the Chris you were referring to?
That would be Chris Albert.
Brian's brother, correct?
That is correct.
And then you texted your wife, Brian Albert, and Nicole Albert, quote, tell them the guy never went in the house, correct?
Yeah, that's part of the same text. Yes.
Mr. McCabe, who was the guy that you were referring to? Does he have a name?
That would be John O'Keefe.
The guy.
When you told the group,
To your point, Bob, the guy, man.
I never went in the house. That was you talking about how you should all get your stories straight, correct?
No.
You would agree with me that your stories are all straight in terms of the guy never went in the house, correct?
Objection.
Can you answer that?
John never went in the house. It's not a story, it's a fact.
Well, when you said, tell them the guy never went in the house, Brian Albert was on that exchange still, was he not? He was still part of the group text?
Yes, Brian is on the exchange.
And Brian Albert was the one to respond, wasn't he?
Let me switch pages here. 51.
He
I
responded.
disagree, Malo.
Yes, he did.
And then at that point, you knew Brian Albert was the oldest brother of the Albert family, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
The oldest sibling in that family, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And in his response to your instructions that his younger brother, Chris, should say that John O'Keefe never went in the house, I never went in the house. You would agree with me that
It's live. Just whenever you're ready. It's just came back.
Yes, he did.
And in response to you saying the guy never went in the house, Brian Albert's response was, exactly, correct?
Yes, that's his response.
We're done here.
I'm done with this guy.
All right.
Class.
Commonwealth with respect.
Just briefly.
All right, so let's go. So that was pretty telling.
Yeah, and Malo, I have to respectfully disagree. Who says I don't think the guy is that damning? I think that's how he talks about a dead man. That there's a murder investigation. I have to disagree on that.
Remind you when
I
it
agree.
comes to
I think
electronic
it is. I think it's very
communications,
telling.
before you can consider them in your deliberations, you must first find that it's more likely true than not that the person who authored or sent the communication was in fact the person identified as doing so. If you do not find it more likely true than not that the person identified as sending the message was the one who sent it, then you may not consider that electronic communication in your deliberations. All right, thank you. Mr. Lally, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, may I approach?
Yes.
Commonwealth receipts into do well. Let me. Those pages that I've just placed before you, do you recognize the content of those?
I do.
What do you recognize those?
They are text messages between myself and John.
And from sort of specifically that time period of the early morning of January 29th through the morning of January 29th?
Yes.
And what's contained in those, is that a fair and accurate portrayal of the content of those text communications?
Yes.
Now, with reference to Mr. O'Keefe, this is someone that you knew and you had his information put into your phone as far as a contact.
Yes.
And on prior occasions when you had contacted, or specifically that morning when you had left the waterfall and you talked to him on the phone, you called him and who answered? You called the contact that you had as John O'Keefe, correct?
Yes.
Okay, who answered the phone?
John.
And then the contact that you had put in as John O'Keefe called you and you answered, and who was on the other line?
John.
Madam Mayor Pro?
Yes.
I'll seek to introduce and admit as an exhibit.
No objection on it.
Thank you. This is subject to what we talked about in sidebar?
Yes, understood.
Thank you. That's exhibit 89. All right, thank you.
Your Honor, with respect to what's now been marked as exhibit 89, if I could, with the court's permission, publish that. Sure.
Yes.
Okay, what's up on the screen, is that what you have before you as that exhibit?
Yes,
And this is a text communication between yourself and Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
correct.
Your Honor, I'm sorry to do this. May we?
Sure, why don't you take that down, Ms. Gilman? And, thank you.
Man, Bev hates shit being left up on screen, doesn't she?
Hates it.
Hates it. Just can't stand it.
Court's on life support again.
What's that weird beeping?
Court is on life support again. They just can't.
Oh, poor life support court. Be sad.
It's been that many sidebars that the court is like, it might not make it today to the end of
A lot of sidebars. Woo! Yeah. Oh, man. Man, oh man. I anticipate that there are going to be a lot
By the way,
of.
Bob, Sonny's here as long as she's ready. I don't know if you saw.
Where's she at? Let me see.
Oh, yeah,
Sonny-
she's ready. I think she's ready.
All right, I'm putting her up.
There she is.
Hi.
So sorry, I'm so late. So
Oh,
late.
it's all right. It's all right.
Apologies
Just started.
necessary. Yeah, you've missed nothing. Nothing except for this beeping. Except for
Oh,
court on
yeah.
life support.
I turned it on. I was talking to my father. I turned it on, and I was like, "Oh wait, I gotta go." I'm like supposed to be in there. Okay. I think I didn't miss anything.
They've basically only showed one text message this entire time.
And then side
Yeah, then sidebar. So you didn't really miss anything.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. So, Ms. McCabe, with what's for you and what's up on the screen is the exhibits. There are sort of green bubbles and blue bubbles, correct?
Correct.
Can you tell the jury as far as who's communicating which direction, as far as the green bubble, but who and the blue bubble?
Green is John and blue is myself.
And so the first text from this particular date, if you could just read to the jury as far as from whom the message is sent, what the content is, and then what the time.
So John sent to me where to at 12:14.
And if it assists you, if you have that in front of you.
Okay.
So the next bubble down is a blue bubble, is that correct?
Correct.
Similar to the one before, can you just read as far as that? Well, before I get to that, I'm sorry. So you received that message from Mr. O'Keefe. You call him, have a conversation, he calls you back for the conversation.
Correct.
And then subsequent to that, you read the next blue bubble down as far as from whom, what the content is, and what time it is.
So this one is from myself to John, and it says here at 12:27. So at that point, I see a car out front, and I text him here.
Testified to as far as looking out the front storm door, seeing a car, and then he sent the text. That's the text.
Correct.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could scroll down to that. And ma'am, similar, if you could just who sent it, what's the content, and what is that time?
I sent to John, pull behind me at 12:31.
And what were you referring to when you said hold on?
So at this point, the car had moved from the prior spot where I originally saw it. So
Sorry.
I thought, what is he
Sorry.
doing? Why don't they just pull behind me in the, in the driveway?
Scroll down. And again, with this bubble, you could read out.
From me to John saying hello, and it was at 12:40.
And at this point in time, as far as, let me ask you this way. When you're sending these text messages over these periodic time periods, what, if anything, are you doing sort of in between?
So I originally went to the front door, saw the car, texted them, that texted John. Then I went back, kind of sat at the table, just either threw my phone probably in my back pocket. And then a couple minutes later, I got up again and saw that the car had moved. So I had sent the pull behind me. And then a few minutes later, I went back to the front door, I'm sorry.
And when you went back to the front door, what, if anything, did you see about?
So at this specific point at 12:40, when I say hello, I cannot be certain whether they were still out front or if they had left.
And from any of these text messages that you sent, what kind of response did you receive from Ms. Gilkey after the alert?
None.
Ms. Gilman, if you could, to the next level. And similar to the prior one.
Sure. Jen to John, where are you? And that was at 12:42.
Go to the next level.
Myself to John, hello, at 12:45.
Now this is later in the morning, and we'll get to that a little bit more in a moment. But at some point, you left the residence of Fairview, you went home, and you were woken by something, and then at some point, you texted John later on that morning, 29th.
Yes.
You know, the next couple of those text messages that you sent at that point.
Correct.
It's similar to the other ones we used.
Myself to John, please answer at 4:59. Myself to John, Karen is worried. We need to find you at 4:59. Myself to John, please answer so I know you're okay. 5:04.
May I approach this retreat? Now, Ms. McCabe, I can take you back to at the house on Fairview. Again, you're sending these text messages and going back to the table and then going back to the window at various times.
To the front door.
To the front door.
Yes.
And at any point in time, do you see anybody exit from the dark SUV or the black SUV you see in front of the house?
No.
And at any point in time, did John O'Keefe come into the house?
No.
And at any point in time, did John O'Keefe respond to your text messages?
No.
At any point in time, did John O'Keefe call?
No.
Now, at some point subsequent to this, have you had occasion to look at your phone or at your call history?
Yes.
And through review of that, were you able to see phone calls that your phone made to John O'Keefe's phone around that same time frame that you were texting him and going to school?
Yes.
May I approach Ron?
Yes.
And I'm showing you a 4-page document. Actually, look at that and look up when you finish. And if I could suggest, I think it starts in reverse order from page 4, timing-wise, up through page 1.
No flashlight, Jay.
No flashlight. Bob, I think you're muted, by the way, Bob. I can't hear you.
Figures. An entire conversation by myself. I was saying, yo mama jokes never get old. And then I asked Sonny how she feels about yo mama jokes.
Just generally speaking, man, do you recognize what's contained in that
I
four-page
do know
document?
your mama.
I do.
What do you recognize?
The calls between myself and John
I
O'Keefe.
put myself on mute because I
And
was
am I
typing.
correct that it starts
And
in
somebody
sort of
said,
a
Sonny, are you typing?
ascending order as far as the most
Yeah, I like trust. I'm always talking on mute. It's like an epidemic.
earliest calls are on page 4, and then the most recent are on the first page?
Yes.
And the phone calls that you were testifying to about before, as far as talking to him on the way from the waterfall to residents at Fairview, did they appear in those?
They do.
Man, they really just cannot get this together where they have a fluid like test. It's like how many sidebars today?
I mean, listen, dude, we knew this was coming. All right.
If we were really, we'd all be dead if we were really taking.
I mean, it's true. It's true. I think it's time for some more Goodwill Hunting.
My boy's wicked smart.
Yeah.
This is a Hobbit bot, huh? I thought there'd be like equations and shit on the walls.
Yeah.
Do you like apples?
Got a number.
How do you like them apples?
Pretty good.
Did you see, by the way, that Ben may be broken up? I don't know if folks saw
What?
that. That's I don't know if did you see that? So that's the word I saw. They might be a little separation with Ben and J-Lo. Might be divorced now. We're getting.
I mean, because they were.
Sonny, I think you're muted now.
This is the back again, right? Like they
Yes,
had
this is
broken.
back again. That should have never been back again because you already knew that they weren't going to be stay again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Within like 10 minutes, there are pictures of him looking just depressed of them getting back together, and now it's
Like,
I mean,
what the F was I thinking? That's what I mean. You remember
the circle of life.
there was something where they were seen like having a little spat out in public. You could tell by their body language towards each other. Something had happened. That Ben and Gravy. Oh, I mean Ben and Jen.
Yeah, I saw they were at some kind of awards ceremony, and she was
yes,
giving a hardcore stink eye. You know,
Yeah.
like
I mean, I always thought he was good with his first wife. But
yeah,
I
yeah.
always thought, I mean, the kids, and she was like even kill, and then he met her for the J-Lo.
Yeah, great point.
You reap what you sow. You reap
Yeah,
what
you
you
get
sow.
all that body. I think you get so much of the physical, and I don't know.
So, Ms. McCabe, as far as the first calls that you were testifying about, as far as when you spoke to Mr. O'Keefe on the way from the waterfall to the residence of Fairview, were those contained within those calls?
Yes.
As far as, is there a time that's associated with those calls that you observe in those 4-page documents?
Yes.
And what else?
12:14 and 12:18.
And turning your attention to page 1, that would be sort of the last in line there. What time is the last call between yourself and Mr. O'Keefe, and who's calling?
I'm calling him at 5:25.
May I approach him?
Yes.
Thank you, Mia Beata.
I won't see you.
I couldn't remember who he was married
Is
to.
there any objection?
There's not coming. Thank you.
Yeah, I like Jennifer Carter.
Me too.
Like she seemed like a regular person.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, Ms. McCabe, you had mentioned that during the course of the evening, shortly after you arrived at the residence of Fairview, you observed a vehicle outside of your sister's house, correct?
Yes.
And Your Honor, with court's permission, I would ask to publish with this witness exhibit 71, 72, and 73.
Okay.
And Ms. McCabe, first and foremost, what's up on the screen is exhibit 71. Do you recognize that?
I do.
Okay, I think you can just go right to what you wanted to identify, please, Mr. Lally.
She's done.
You on the desk, there should be a laser pointer, just click on the button and point to the screen. And if I could ask, if you could direct, well, first and foremost, with respect to this photograph, do you observe in this photograph where you first saw the black SUV in front of the house?
Yeah, the judge.
It was directly if I was staring out the front door. So this angle is kind of unique to see it. But if you go from the front door directly straight out, so maybe the edge, if you understand what I'm saying.
Using that just direct to his attention.
So if there's the front door and I look straight out, but the perception is almost like a side view. It's not straight on, so it could have been a little over here.
So Lally, why don't you show another picture if this one isn't helpful?
She's just taking over now.
Is it visible in this photograph?
Yes, so just follow this and then come straight.
I was looking at the wrong door.
Lastly,
I've been looking at
another point.
Side one?
Front door and you observe.
Yes.
Correct.
I'm not a good
But
witness.
again, using the laser pointer just to bring your attention to
I'm
where this photograph
Okay,
is going
so-
to observe with the vehicle in a second.
Lally, go to the mic, dude. Can't hear a fucking word you're saying.
It was right above, right near the flagpole.
Okay. This gentleman, you can take that.
All right, the judge has attitude. She's like, look, get y'all shiggity together.
Right.
Big time.
Move your
Big
shit
time.
along, dude.
Oh my God.
Now, turning your attention to back in the home, at some point you indicated you looked out and didn't see the black SUV there anymore.
Correct.
And what was your thought as far as where John was or where John had gone at that point?
At that point, I thought maybe they decided not to come in. Maybe they got into an argument, or maybe Kaylee had called.
Did you think much of it at that point?
No,
Yeah,
Now-
they could.
You leave the home around what time?
approximately 1:30, roughly 1:30, 1:45.
And when you leave, who, if anyone, goes with you?
So it's myself, my husband Matt, and I had offered when Julie Nagel's brother had come to the house earlier. I had offered Julie and Sarah Levinson a ride home because we had just gotten there and they had wanted to stay later. So I also drove home Julie and Sarah. My husband drove them home.
And so you exit the house, go out to the vehicle, correct?
Correct.
And your husband Matt was driving?
Yes.
Where are you seated?
And the front seat.
And do you recall where Miss Levinson and Miss Nagel were seated in the car?
They were in the back seat.
Do you recall which one was on which side?
I do not.
And when you come out of the house and you're starting to go home, what, if anything, had changed as far as the weather from when you had gone in to when you had?
The snow had, accumulated more.
And when you get into the vehicle and as the vehicle is pulling away, what, if any, conversation do you recall having with anyone in the car?
When I got in the car, I kind of turned around to Julie.
I'm going to allow this subject to meeting strength. There's a portion that's relevant. Go ahead.
I turned around and was facing them and talking to them. And I believe Sarah Levinson had laughed or made a joke because I had bread or something in my car. And we made a joke about that. I had my niece earlier that week for the week. And so I had brought stuff in the car because I was dragging her from one of my kids' sporting events to the next.
Oh, we're getting to the blob, huh? We're
And
getting to
as
the...
Blobbing.
do you recall which direction, or did you observe which direction your husband Matt exited from residence in Fairview? And by that I mean, did he head towards Chapman or did he head towards?
Chapman.
And so as far as, I may not have asked this before, but as far as the black SUV that you observed in front of the house, which direction was that vehicle facing?
Chapman.
Each of the times that you saw it?
Yes.
And so as with that vehicle, as with the one that your husband was driving, which side of the vehicle would have been closest to the house in
Passenger.
Now, as you're driving past the house, heading past, how were you positioned within the car?
I'm turned chatting to the girls.
So, and when you're turned, are you turned towards the window or are you turned towards the console? Which way are you?
Turn the console towards the back seat. So my back is to the window.
And either of these girls, did you know where they lived?
No.
Do you recall whether or not you found their homes by way of sort of yes, or was it just sort of verbal directions?
I'm assuming they just gave Matt directions to where they lived.
So you drop each of them off. Do you recall which order they were dropped off in?
Julie, then Sarah.
And then following dropping off Sarah, where did you and your husband go?
Home.
And this whole trip sort of from Fairview to dropping off Miss Nagel, Miss Levinson, and then going home, about how long a period of time is that?
It could be 20, 30 minutes, maybe about approximately 20 minutes. Not exactly sure.
You arrived home sometime after 2 a.m., is that correct?
Yes.
And when you and your husband Matt got home, went inside the house, and where did you go?
I went upstairs to bed.
And at some point, did your husband come up as well?
He did.
Was it a long period of time between when you arrived home and when your husband came up?
I don't think too long. I think he had like some cheese or something because he was on a crazy diet, and then he came upstairs.
Now, did you go right to sleep, or what, if anything, did you do when you went up to bed?
I asked him to watch a show. He said no, he was going to fall asleep, which he does usually immediately. And I went on my phone.
And what, if anything, do you recall doing on your phone as far as going on?
I was researching, my husband and I did briefly talk. My daughter had gotten an offer to play on a club bat.
Just tell us what you do, please.
Sure. I was researching a basketball team, and I believe I also texted my sisters, and I texted in a group chat with my husband and another individual.
Now, if I could just turn your attention back to when you were at the house on Fairview that evening, and I believe this is the last time, so I apologize for the back and forth, but when you were there, what, if any, videos or any music or anything that you pull up on your phone to share with the group?
So one of my sisters loves this song Raining Men. And she always, well, not always, maybe every once in a while, she's a little too much to drink and takes out an umbrella and sings and dances. And it's like a big family joke. And my other nephew had previously been over and showed me the video from whenever, I don't know if it's the 1970s, of It's Raining Men. So I just was playing it, showing my other nieces and nephews, and we were just like laughing because they all have umbrellas, and it's just something, it's like an inside family joke. So I played that, I think, a couple of times.
And so after
that was so
you get
important, he had to
home
go
and
back to
you're
that.
looking at
Why
the
do we care
basketball
about
program
that?
and things of that nature, what, if anything,
That's so
else
ridiculous.
did you do before you went to bed or went to sleep? I should say.
Ridiculous, maybe?
Nothing. I possibly could have gotten up to go to the bathroom. I do that almost every night.
All of this
Now,
is not, to me, relevant to
At this
what
time,
happened.
you had an iPhone, is that
I'm
correct?
just saying, but
Yes.
I could be wrong.
Did you all?
Sonny would give a relevance objection right here. Relevance objection. Objection. Get your shit right.
Sidebar.
Shot. Sorry.
Also have an Apple Watch?
I did, yes.
And do you recall whether or not you were wearing the Apple Watch that evening or when you went to bed or anything like that?
I do not recall.
And as far as the Apple Watch is concerned, is that something that you routinely or always take off before you go to bed? Or?
Mostly, but not always. I mean, there are times I go to bed with it on. More often than not, I take it off, but there are times that I do sleep with it.
And with
How dare
respect
you,
to this
madam?
particular evening, do you recall whether you had it on or whether you took it off or even had it on at all?
I don't recall if I had it on that night.
I've had for mine, so
Going
I'm
back to
going.
that last exhibit, as far as the phone calls were concerned, were there certain phone calls that you made to Mr. O'Keefe's phone around the time that you were observing the vehicle outside?
Yes,
Do you recall making any phone calls to Mr. O'Keefe at that time?
I don't.
Fair to say that at no point while you saw the vehicle outside did you have any conversation with Mr. O'Keefe?
I didn't.
Now you go to sleep, and at some point later on in the morning, you wake up, correct?
Correct.
And what is it that wakes you up, and when about was that?
I woken up to my phone ringing.
And do you know what time it was?
4:53.
And according to your phone, who was calling you at 4:53?
John's niece.
And so that would be John's niece, Kaylee, is that correct?
Correct.
And how old was she at this time?
I believe she was 14.
And she had just gotten into Bishop Thean, correct?
Correct.
She was in 8th grade going in, finishing up her 8th grade year of middle school, correct?
Yes.
Is that a normal thing, that Kaylee would be calling you at 4:53 in the morning on a Saturday?
No.
So you answer the call, is that correct?
Yes.
When you answer the call, who, if anyone, is initially on the other?
Initially, it's Kaylee.
And what, if anything, did Kaylee say to you?
That John didn't come home and Karen and we wanted to talk to me.
And even in that initial call, when you're speaking to Kaylee, what, if anything, do you hear sort of in the background when you're talking?
Karen screaming.
And could you hear what she was screaming?
She was just screaming, Jen, Jen, Jen.
Fairly loudly, is that correct?
Extremely.
Now, at some point, does the defendant get on the phone with you?
She does.
And what, if any, conversation do you have with her at that?
She proceeds to scream my name multiple times, and she tells me that John didn't come home, they got into a fight, and that she left him at the waterfall.
And how do you respond?
I had just woken up. I was confused. I didn't know what she was talking about. I was like, what are you talking about? And then she, told me that they had gotten into a fight and she left him there. And now where is he? And she was just kept screaming my name over and over. And so then I remembered that Chris Albert had still been at the bar. So I thought, well, maybe John walked home with Chris because Chris lives close to the waterfall.
And so at some point that conversation ended and you recall how that ended?
I told her that I was going to call Julie and see if John had ended up with Chris.
And so you hang up with her, and then what did you do next?
I called Julie Albert.
And did Julie pick up the phone?
She did not.
And as you were calling Julie, did you have any conversation with your husband, Matt, around that time?
Yes. He, had kind of shot up out of bed when Karen had called. When Kaylee had called, because Karen was screaming. And then he was, what's going on? And I said, well, I'm calling Julie because Karen, they got into a fight, and I was trying to explain it to him. And he said, what are you talking about? We saw them outside of your sister's house. And at that point, I hung up.
And when you hung up, Julie had not answered yet, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, as far as Miss Reed, is that someone who had your phone number? Did you have her plugged into your phone as a contact before that date of January 29th?
No.
So never had any kind of conversation with her over the phone as far as a text or a phone call or anything. You didn't even have her information.
Correct.
And so after hanging up while calling Julie, what, if anything, did you do then?
Hey,
And then I'm not sure if I called Kaylee back or if Kaylee called me back.
At some point, you get back in touch with Kaylee, or at least with the phone, correct?
Yes, I get Karen. I get in touch with Karen again, and I say, Karen, we saw you outside of my sister's.
And what was her response?
She told me that she didn't remember going there, and then she started yelling, Jen, Jen. And then she was saying, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? And then she proceeded to say that she had a cracked taillight.
Okay. Here we
This
go.
is why you're still in
Okay,
your
get
home
this on
and
the
you're in
thing,
your bed.
on
Correct.
the time thing.
And what was your response to that?
I thought she was honestly like
Yeah,
just
that
talking
thing.
crazy. And then she said, "Oh my God, I left him there." Like she was extremely irrational. She said that it told me again that they had gotten into a fight. So now she was just kind of all over the place, just screaming. She was very hard to understand. So my brain started going, okay, well, if she left him there, where could he be? Who could he be with?
So pause it real quick, Jay.
Well, here's the question. I don't know if
So
I
then-
can because Bob was. Oh, who paused it?
I don't know. Maybe Bob's probably listening. Oh no, he's not there.
Well, yeah,
Maybe Busy did
Allie,
it. Hi, Sonny.
how you doing, sister from the church? All right.
Yeah, I'm lurking. So anytime y'all need me to pause, I'll pause it.
There we go. All right. So
All right. So I've had 2 husbands and a few little lovers on the side. My question is, I'm trying to think of a time when like they didn't come home or something, or they were late, and I woke up screaming, panicking because they weren't there in the way that it's being described. I
Right.
don't know.
And I could see being upset, but not screaming, panicking the way it's being described. And also, like, because what time is this? It's like 5 a.m., Jay?
Yeah.
And is this the first time that
Yeah, it's 5 a.m. when she's calling Jen, but why is she screaming? And I guess she's not a mom and everybody's not calm, but the screaming in front of the children then gets them all angst up. Like I'm keeping my composure, trying to.
Right.
I'm not. I could be pissed, but I am not panicked because I'm not sure what I would be panicked about because, like, the grown man didn't come home. Like he might be. You know, I'm just thinking.
And it does. It makes you think that assuming her testimony is true, that Karen reverted too quickly to panic and did I hit him?
That part. And see, that's where I'm getting at. It was like straight panic mode. And why that way, even though it was a storm or.
But it was the second call, right? So she had this like time to, or is it the second call when she is first told, we saw you drop him off or we saw you pull up to the house, or was she told that on the first call?
That I am not sure of. If anyone in the chat can confirm that, I am not sure.
You boys are paying close attention.
Al, you just bust my chops all the time. Mods, block Allie. This is outrageous. Get her off the screen. I can't take this.
I think it's the first call. I think this is the first call. No.
It's the second call she's describing. But what I'm not sure is, did they tell her during the first call, well, wait a minute, we saw you come to McCabe, so that she's had some time to process the fact that she did get there and now she can't find him, to start piecing those things together to cause panic right away. Or if she learned only on that second call, they said to her, no, we saw you pull up to the house. If
They're
all
saying
that
not, Chad is saying not on the first, that was not said on the first call is what Chad is saying.
So this is the second call.
So she first realizes that someone tells her you've been. So when she says, I don't remember that was the second call when she says, I don't remember coming there.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a lot of liquor.
Yeah, it's a lot of liquor.
And
that's a lot.
Earlier in the night, there was another individual who we had been in contact with, or my husband had been talking to, and he had mentioned that he was gonna meet up with John at Waterfall as well, but he never ended up coming. I knew he was at a house close to Fairview. So I thought, well, maybe if they got into a fight, like John might have texted this individual and maybe he just ended up on his couch.
Who was that individual?
Tom Beatty.
And who is Tom Beatty in relation to, how did you know?
He has 2 daughters that are the same age as my daughters.
One of those daughters, at least around the same age as Kaylee?
Yes.
And so based on sort of that process, thought process and what you're doing, what did you do?
So then I start calling Tom.
And at any point in time that you call Tom, did Tom pick up the phone? Did you speak with him?
He did not.
And so following that, what did you do?
So I know at some point I was starting to call John. My husband was as well. At that point, I get up and I'm like, okay, well, got to go out and look for him. And in my head, I was thinking I'll drive over to Tom's and maybe he's there. I then go downstairs. Matt gets up. He's starting to get dressed. I go downstairs. I make a coffee. And I'm not sure how much time passed, but then all of a sudden I hear screaming out front.
Now, if I could just take it back for a second, as far as decade or so that you had known and been friends with John O'Keefe, with his either his niece or his nephew or both home, is him not coming home, is that something that had ever happened before, you were ever aware of before?
I was never.
Had John ever gone out at night and then not come home when the kids?
How would she know? Objection.
Not to my knowledge, no.
Is she monitoring John's
So
sleeping
at some point, you
habits?
make your way downstairs, is that
I
right?
told you something was
Correct.
going on
And
there.
what, if anything, did you hear once you were downstairs?
Like how was she
Screaming.
know
And where was the screaming coming
Out front.
from? And
that?
when you heard that screaming, where did you go?
I ran to my front door.
At some point, did you open your front door?
I opened my front door, correct.
And then what did you see when you opened the front door?
Miss Reed came running up my walkway.
And
She
prior
did
to
get out of the
during
car.
any of the other conversations that you had with Miss Reed, did you know where she was when you were talking to her?
No,
Obviously, the first call was Kaylee calling from the house. That was
Yes.
the assumption.
Mhm.
And then subsequent.
yes,
And as far as the second call that you were talking about, do you know where she was when she was talking to you?
the first couple calls I know she was at the house, and then I don't know.
So was opening your door, hearing the screaming from out front, was that something that surprised you?
Yes,
Something
And
that's
when you
what?
hear the screaming, if you could just explain to
I
the
couldn't
jury,
tell.
how loud was the screaming that you
very loud.
and what, if anything, was she saying?
It was more of the Jen, did I hit him? And then she would yell, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? And then she was yelling, we have to go to Fairview.
And in addition to Miss Reed, what, if anything, else did you see when you opened up the door?
Just,
Ask in a better way. Did
Yeah.
you see a vehicle?
yes,
And where was the vehicle and what did the vehicle look like?
it was in my driveway. I believe the driver door was left open.
And what kind of vehicle was it?
A black Lexus.
Consistent with what you had seen outside of Fairview the night or earlier in the morning.
Yes,
And so as she's coming up your walk toward your front door,
running, yes.
and then what, if any, conversation did you have with her there in reference to that?
I just said, Karen, I was trying to calm her down. Matt came, I believe, and was yelling down that she was going to wake up the neighborhood. And then she was yelling that we had to go to Fairview. So I told Matt that I was going to go with Karen.
Initially,
And
before
Matt's
that,
looking at the
what
window
were your
at her
plans as far
taillight.
as going to look for John
Yeah.
before Miss Reed showed up?
My husband and I were going to go to Tom Beatty's.
Now, once you decide that now you're going with Miss Reed, the defendant, where did the two of you go?
So as we walked out, there was a car pulled up and then a plow.
Recognize the car that pulled up?
No.
I'm sorry. So the car pulls up and then the plow, and then what happens?
So in the car was Kerry Roberts. And so she kind of rolled down the window and was like, Karen, what are you doing? And then the plow was behind her. So Kerry pulled up and I told Karen that I was going to drive her car because I didn't want her driving because she was hysterical. So we got in her car and then Kerry Roberts called Karen. And then Karen was screaming and, saying that she had cracked her taillight. We need to go to Fairview. could I have hit him? Did I hit him? And then she would just scream
Can you
our
pause
name.
it real quick, Jay?
Carrie.
Bob has
Or
to.
Bob, can you call it? Okay. So did she say the same thing her husband said, that on the phone call, she had already said she cracked her tail light on that second phone call? I think she might have just said it. Now
She just, I think that's what she just said. Yeah, that.
Yeah. And her husband said it too, that the tail light, because he said he looked out the window. Oh, he looked out the window and more than once, and he saw, and he told Jen that he wasn't sure about her riding with her because the tail light was out, and he wasn't sure if it was going to be safe given the weather that they were having.
I mean, I don't see how one broken tail light, you'd be sitting there telling your wife you're concerned about them driving around. It's like, you're concerned about that if you don't want to get pulled over, you know? But
great.
I mean, it doesn't mean that all the rest of it's a lie. It just seems like there's so many things that are kind of added to it. Like, you know, so she's mentioning the taillight now a second time. I don't know, maybe she's drunk. She doesn't remember. She already told him about the taillight. And he's from inside in dark places, able to see snow tracks and watching for, you know, the conditions.
So he said he heard, I think this is correct. He said he heard it on the phone. I don't think I missed his testimony, so I can't, but the chat is saying.
He definitely said that on the second phone, he said on the second phone call, because I was watching it.
Yeah.
Karen Reed told his wife, my tail light is broken.
Yeah.
Right. He heard it, but he didn't see it, right?
No, then later.
Oh, later.
Says,
all right. My bad.
Yeah,
he says, I saw it.
Yeah, he said he saw it. Now he heard it. She either had him on speakerphone or she was so loud and he could hear it through the phone, that part. But he said he saw it himself, that the tail light was broken. But
and that he felt like Sonny said, that he was like, I don't know if you should be driving in a vehicle with a broken tail light, a missing tail light, or out tail light.
When you look on, who was it, Bomber, somebody that sent something, the video at 5:07 a.m. They sent it, they shared it with us on Twitter. And it's not really a good view because I'm looking at it from my phone. When you look at the video of Karen Reed pulling out the driveway at the place, and I'm not seeing the tail light, but I probably need to see a better version of it to see if it looks like.
And I think that could be the best. Are you talking about the one where it's possible she bumps into another vehicle, or is this a different video?
No.
Right.
But that's at the house before she gets to Jen's house. So
right. So
it's not broken there.
Right. But they're placing her, it seems like they're placing her saying the words before she ever backed out. And I wonder if we'll see on cross if that's something that they had ever mentioned before.
Right.
You know, that she says it. And I find it strange that Jen seems very sure that Karen's calling from inside her house for that first two calls or something like that. It seems like it's very much to make sure that no one thinks she could have backed out and hit the tail light before she spoke those words to them.
Right.
On the phone.
How far did they live from one another that she could get there quickly from the first phone? Well, we don't know how.
Well, if she's in Canton, they've said that basically it's a geographical oddity and they're all very, close to one another.
So she can get there really quickly. But dang, in bad weather and snow everywhere, she must have been driving like a bat out of hell.
Right. And I know at some point somebody says that Karen drove back over to the bar. So I guess we'll have to find out if she did that before. I'm laughing at the murder pig.
I know.
She did that before this phone call where she says to them, my taillight's broken. Because I don't know if she hadn't left the house yet, right? If she got home after dropping him off and, wakes up not remembering even having dropped him off, in theory, she would not know her taillight's already broken unless she has again left the house and gotten back out of the car and then saw it broken.
Okay, now, Allie, you just added more grease to the game. If the taillight wasn't broken earlier, she came from inside of the house to the car which you don't go behind the car to get in the car because she was backing out. So she would not have known that the tail light was busted had it happened prior to, because she would get in the car from the house in the garage, walk to the car, to the driver's side, get in, and then back the car out, not having looked at the back of the car, because we see her backing out at 5:07.
Right. All right, let's go, Jay. See how it plays out.
Oh, jeez.
To shut up.
Look, I need a
That we
drink.
needed to just go back to John's and we'll drive in one car and let's go to John's. Maybe he's there and he's passed out and you didn't see him.
Mhm.
When you open up the door initially and you come outside and you see the defendant out there screaming and all of that. Again, with respect to the weather, what was the weather at that point?
It was like dark and it was almost like a whiteout.
And so you get into Ms. Reed's vehicle, correct?
Yes.
And you're driving that vehicle from your house to Meadows Ave, is that correct?
Yes.
That's Mr. O'Keefe's house?
Yes.
You're familiar with that residence? You've been there plenty of times before?
Yes.
Now, with respect to Terry
She's
Roberts,
definitely painting a picture that all along Karen Reed knew and that she was
I had
saving
met her
the
once
whole
before.
story.
And can you describe to the jury sort of the circumstances of that or how you knew her prior to January 20th?
Way back when, after John's sister and brother-in-law died, I would have Kaylee a lot and Carrie would have Patrick. And one day John said, I get a discount at Reebok. I'm going to take you guys for sneakers, get all your kid sizes. So he took Carrie and myself and we went to Reebok. We bought sneakers for all my girls and me. And then he took Carrie and I to the hillside for lunch just to thank him for, helping, because that's what he did.
Now, was Kerry Roberts someone that you had as contact saved in your phone? Had you ever texted her or called her or talked to her over your phone before?
No.
So you indicated that Ms. Roberts then calls Ms. Reed's phone while you're in Ms. Reed's car, correct?
Yes.
Now, as far as that, Ms. Reed's phone, was that similar to your phone that earlier in the morning? Was that hooked up in any way or matched or paired with the vehicle that you were driving?
Yes.
So fair to say you could hear both sides of the conversation as far as Ms. Reed talking next to you and then obviously Ms. Roberts on the other end?
Yes.
So the conversation that you were talking about as far as Ms. Roberts saying, shut up and we're going to Meadows Ave and all of that, you could hear Ms. Roberts saying that?
Yes.
Now, the vehicle, when you get into the defendant's vehicle, she pulled in straight into your driveway, is that correct?
Yes.
So fair to say you had the back out of the
How's he
driveway,
seeing her tail light?
Correct.
Now, when you were operating Ms. Reed's vehicle in reverse, what, if anything, showed up in sort of the center console area of that?
I do not remember. I don't know.
Do you recall anything as far as the camera or anything like that?
I don't remember. I don't remember.
I have to say, I
Back the vehicle
never
out of the driveway.
used. Here, hey, babe, pause it.
Meadows Ave, correct?
Yeah.
I never use my rear. Like when a younger person's in my car, they're like, "Why aren't you turning around and looking?" I literally, unless I'm parking and I'm like looking at the lines and like I use it when I'm parking, but when I'm pulling out of a spot or anything like that, I'm never relying on my camera. I'm turning around and looking.
Yes.
It might be like an age thing,
Yes, it's 2024. Get with the times, Allie. What are you doing? Use the camera. That's what it's there for.
Well,
it has the lines. It has the whole thing.
How long a drive?
My Mercedes doesn't have the backup camera, and I'm an old school driver. I back in everywhere. And I'm still turning around because I'm like, shit, those things might not work right. And I'm a good driver, and everyone else is bad.
Approximately 5-6 minutes.
And when you get to Mr. O'Keefe's house,
You could have seen the tail light.
I pull in straight in the driveway.
And after you pull into the driveway, at some point you all get out, correct?
Yes.
Do you recall who pulled in first as far as who was in front of who on the way to Meadows, yourself or Ms. Roberts?
I believe I was in front.
You would have pulled into the driveway and parked, and Ms. Roberts would have pulled in and parked behind, correct?
Yes.
And so after the three of you get out of your respective vehicles, what happened?
Karen brings us to the back of the car and she
I don't know
says,
about this. I'm
look,
gonna
see,
check,
I have a
'cause
cracked
I think
tail
he
light.
did.
And where on the vehicle was she directing yourself and Ms. Roberts' attention?
The back right.
So passenger side, rear part of the vehicle.
Yes.
And when you looked at that area of the vehicle, what could you see of that?
I saw that there were missing pieces, but there was also snow covering it. And Karen was screaming, look, look. And then Kerry was screaming back at her. It was very chaotic. So I didn't stare in depth, but what I can tell you is I saw missing pieces from the taillight.
Okay.
Pieces,
Mhm.
not a whole entire thing gone.
Right.
And at some point, about how long a period of time is this that you're out in Mr. O'Keefe's driveway looking at the cracked taillight?
Not long, because then Kerry's, yelling at her, telling her she's crazy and that she was driving around drunk and she could have hit anything, and kind of rushes us to go into the house to look in there for John.
Yeah.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would ask if I could publish on the screen what's been marked as exhibit number 2.
Okay.
Everybody is consistent about one thing. She was hysterical. And when you look at the video, you see her pacing.
And Mr. McCabe, do you recognize what's up on the screen?
I do.
Back and forth.
That is Meadows Ave, John's house.
And the driveway that you're talking about as far as where you pulled in, that's not visible in this photograph, correct?
Correct.
So from facing Mr. O'Keefe's house on Meadows, which side of the photograph would the driveway be? The left or
The right.
And Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
I'm just showing you another photograph. Just ask you to look at that. Look how it's finished.
Okay.
Do you recognize what's in that photograph?
Yes.
All right,
What do
pause
you
it, babe.
recognize?
That's John's car.
Okay, so I just played it back, and he said that he watched from. Did you ever look outside or go outside? He said, I did not go outside. I looked from my bedroom window, and I saw Miss Reed's car. And then the question was, what occurred to you? And he started to say what he said to his wife. And of course, the judge said, you can't. So he said, well, what occurred to me is that my wife was going to be driving with her and she was missing a taillight. So his testimony was definitely that he looked out the window and saw, a missing taillight.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got it's right at an hour. Was really like an hour 2.51 if anyone wants to double check from the earlier stream, but that's what he said.
Yeah.
Where
I
is
thought that's what he said. I thought he said he saw.
It's parked to the side of the driveway.
And you also see sort of the garage area in that photograph?
Yes.
Or may I approach? I'm going to seek to introduce in the next.
Objection.
Did they impound her car? Did they check the vehicle? Like,
Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I
I mean,
could
yeah,
publish that to
this
the jury as
comment from
well.
Joe, I'm saying the same thing. They asked him, like, what occurred to you? And he said, what occurred was I was concerned that she would be driving in the car because there was a missing taillight.
Now, Mr. McCabe, with reference to what's up on the screen, is that the photo that you just had for you?
Yes.
And there are 2 garage doors on the house at One Meadows Ave, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Left and a right, is that fair way?
Yes.
And you've been inside Mr. O'Keefe's house a number of times, correct?
Yes.
Now, with respect to the garage door on the left, what was contained within that part of the car?
His old-fashioned car.
One that Kaylee didn't like?
Yes.
And on the right side of the garage, what if anything was in?
It's pretty open.
How would you describe Mr. O'Keefe as far as how he kept things around his house, either in the house or the lawn or things around?
John was very meticulous. Everything had its place.
Now, when you arrived there on the morning of the 29th, Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle wasn't parked in that position, correct?
Correct.
From the outside of the residence, were you aware of there being any sort of security cameras or anything affixed to the house of One Meadows Ave at that time?
Yes.
How were you aware of that?
John told us he was, I don't remember, years prior, I believe, he came over and he was so excited that he got in a ring and he would always show us it. He just was always watching.
And when he would show you that, how would he show you? Like on what kind of device?
On his phone.
So he had the ring application hooked up to his cell phone?
Yes.
Now, with respect to that morning when you arrived, if you could, using the laser pointer, just sort of delineate for the jury whereabouts you had parked Ms. Reed's vehicle when you pulled in and you see it in this photo.
So it would be right there because John's car was further over.
Mr. O'Keefe's car was further over to the fence?
Towards the fence, yes.
And so when you arrive there, you're looking at the taillight and at some point you go in the house, correct?
Correct.
How did you get into the house that morning?
The right garage door was open.
Now, is that something normal as far as when you get to Mr. O'Keefe's house and the garage door is open and the snowstorm?
No.
And so you go in through the garage door and then you go into the house, correct?
Yes.
And it's going to need to take place. So, Ms. McCabe, if you could describe to the jury sort of how you, when you come in through that right garage door and you start to go into the house, what is it when you see when you first come into the house, and what is sort of the layout of Mr. O'Keefe's house?
You walk in from the garage and there's a mudroom.
And typically when you would walk into Mr. O'Keefe's house, what, if anything, would you or anyone else do when they walked into his house?
Take off your shoes.
And why was that?
He didn't want dirt or that morning snow probably getting all over his house.
And so that was a pretty well-known rule for anybody that spent any time at his house on Meadows Ave.
Yes.
And so when you and Ms. Roberts and Ms. Reed walked into the home that morning, into the mudroom, what did you do? What did Ms. Roberts do? What did Ms. Reed do?
I took off my boots or shoes, whatever I had on. Carrie Roberts took off. Karen just ran straight in the house.
You and Ms. Roberts both took off your shoes, and Ms. Reed then just walked into the house with boots or shoes or whatever she was wearing on.
Yes.
And then once you get into the house, where is it that the three of you went respectively once you got in?
We all dispersed. I looked in the TV room where there is a couch. Then I kind of walked through a dining room, and then I peeked into a living room. I went upstairs. I looked in John's room. Carrie was also running around different rooms. And then I went into Kaylee's room.
I can't believe he thought it was important.
When you and Ms. Roberts are sort of going around room to room, what was the defendant?
I was just saying that I just feel like it's weird that he thought it was significant enough to put in that Karen didn't remove her shoes, and anyone at John's house knows he wants your shoes removed. So I guess she didn't remove them because she knew he was dead and he wouldn't be mad that she didn't remove her shoes, as opposed to she's frantic at this point and not giving a shit about whether she takes off her shoes or not.
Or drunk. I thought maybe like she was like wasted, just didn't care, just walked in and passed out. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
You see her doing the same thing. Now, Mr. McCabe, as far as what you observe from what you can on the screen right now, the condition of the passenger side tail light, is that consistent with what you observed when you parked the vehicle there sometime earlier that day?
It's kind of hard to see from this distance.
And just, if you could, lastly, just with the laser pointer right where in the video you see the rear passenger side tail light. Just go in, you can take it.
I don't know if I could see anything.
Now, Ms. McCabe, you then, yourself, the defendant, and Ms. Roberts then get into Ms. Roberts' vehicle, is that correct?
Yes.
Who was seated where within Ms. Roberts' vehicle as you're going from Meadows Ave? Or what was the plan and where were you going sort of first when you left Meadows Ave?
We were going to Fairview
And why were you going to Fairview?
because Karen kept screaming, we need to go to Fairview.
Are you sure?
Now, who was seated where within the vehicle when you did it?
Kerry was driving, I was in the passenger seat, and Karen was in the back.
And what were the lighting conditions at this point that you're driving over there?
It was hard to see out the window. You really had to be kind of staring out. It was dark. The snow was coming at the car.
And as you're making that drive, or as Ms. Roberts is making that drive from Meadows Ave to Fairview, about how long a drive is it?
Approximately 10 minutes. I mean, with the weather, the lights, the street lights, I would say about 10 minutes, give or take.
And as far as during the drive from Meadows Ave to Fairview, what's going on inside the car over the course of that ride?
Karen is in between us, like from the back, kind of pushing up in between Carrie and myself. And she's just screaming, Carrie, Carrie, her name over and over, my name over and over, and repeating certain phrases. Could I have hit him? Did I hit him? Carrie is yelling at her to shut up, to sit back, to buckle up, to look for John.
And while this is going on, what, if anything, are you and Ms. Roberts doing in the front seat?
She's slowly driving and I'm just peering out the window looking for John. I mean, it was a crazy situation. She's screaming, he didn't come home. Could he be walking home? Where is he? So we're just looking out the window, looking for John.
Now, during the time that this is going on and Ms. Reed is sort of screaming in between you, was that continuous or what, if anything else, did you see her doing in the back seat while you were going from Meadows Ave there?
I didn't see her doing anything. She just continuously screamed that. And then as we got by different landmarks, she then started, screaming, asking if John could be at certain people's houses.
And whose houses was she asking if John could be at?
If she could be at Bella's house.
Referring to the directions that you had provided the night before?
Correct.
And so that
Here he
been,
goes. This is insinuating it has something to do with Bella's mom.
Bella was a child who was around the age of Kaylee and your daughter, correct?
Yes.
And there have been some years in the past dating relationship between Mr. O'Keefe and Bella's mom, correct?
Yes.
And so Ms. Reed is saying that in the car that morning as you're driving over to Fairview?
Yes, she asked, could he have been with Ashley? And I looked at her and said no, because to me that was a crazy idea. And then Carrie had mentioned, oh, do you think he could have called somebody else that lived on a street over? And she started screaming, who's that? Who's she?
And you recall who Carrie referred to?
Yes.
And who was that?
A woman that John had previously dated.
And was that anywhere recent time when you were driving around on January 29th? When they had dated?
No.
So similar to Bella's mother would have been years before?
Correct.
And so when Ms. Roberts said that, what, if anything, did the defendant?
She was just spiraling, yelling about Ashley, who was Bella's mom, and just talking what I thought was very irrational about John maybe being with her.
Well, if she knows she has struck him, which they're trying to basically allege, why in the hell would she be frantically trying to
You're
guess
looking
the house
around
she's at?
outside of the vehicle as the vehicle is going down towards Fairview, is that correct?
Yes.
And you recall how it was that Ms. Roberts came about coming to Fairview similar to the night before? Did she come in from the Chapman side or from the Cedar Crest side?
Chapman.
And as the vehicle turns from Chapman onto Fairview, what, if any, conversation was going on at that point?
Well, Bella lives on that street, so that was when that conversation was being had. Also, just a continuation. It was just like continuous screaming of our names. Carrie screaming at her to sit back, and then sometimes she would sit back and almost like be quiet for a minute, and then it would start all over again.
Now, as you were coming down Fairview Road, what, if anything, were you saying to Ms. Roberts did Ms. Roberts know where she was going as far as where your sister lived?
No, I told her that my sister lived at the bottom. And then as we got closer, I said, just past, see where those trees are? Just past the trees is my sister's house.
As you got in that area of sort of the trees, from the residence of your sister at 34 Fairview Road, trees that you're talking about, where are they in relation to the property?
They're at the start of the property is the trees, and then their property begins.
And so the flagpole area and the fire hydrant that you were talking about in earlier exhibits, is that in the same area as the trees?
Yes, a little. It goes the trees and then the fire hydrant, then further up is the fire hydrant and the flagpole.
As you're coming down Fairview now, approaching 34 Fairview, the house would be on which side of the vehicle, on the driver's side or the passenger side?
The driver's side.
And as you approach that area where trees and the flagpole and the fire hydrant were, what, if anything, happens then?
We drive past the flagpole area, and all of a sudden Karen starts screaming, there he is, and she's banging to get out.
Are you sure?
And banging on the door in the back seat?
Yes.
And at the time that she's saying this, were you able to see anything outside of the vehicle?
I saw nothing.
And what, if anything, when she's banging and kicking or banging on the door, what did Ms. Roberts?
Miss Roberts unlocked the door. Karen got out. Miss Roberts looked at me and said something like, she's crazy or she's batshit crazy, something like that.
And when the defendant gets out of the vehicle, where is it that she goes?
She just runs.
And runs where?
Straight to John.
And again, when she's running, at this point in time, can you see what she's running toward or where she's going or anything that she's talking about?
I was on the passenger side. So as I got out, she was already at John.
So she gets out and essentially makes a beeline over to where John was?
Correct.
And you're getting out of the passenger side, and by the time you come around the car, she's already there.
Yes.
She's claiming it was a whiteout.
And when she gets over there, what, if anything, could you see at that point?
She straddles John and she lifts up his shirt, and then she lifted up her shirt and went to lay on him. And Miss Roberts,
to warm his body up.
Miss Roberts went over and she was removing the snow from his face.
Let me take a step back from that just for a moment. In Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would ask to publish just a portion of what's been marked as Exhibit 12.
Okay.
It's egregious, preposterous.
Mr. McCabe, I'm going to direct your attention up to the screen of what's been marked as Exhibit 12, and I know this is not something that pertains to your vehicle or anything else. But what I'm going to ask
I just want to put up this video where it's like impossible to see anything.
Consistent with what you observed during the drive through Fairview Road that way. It's going to be quick play.
And one of the EMTs did say I thought that they saw John before they saw the people or something like that. But there was other
As
testimony.
this video is running, Ms. McCabe, if I could just ask, what you see in this video, is that consistent with sort of the lighting and the conditions weather-wise that you observed when Ms. Roberts is driving from Meadows Ave to Fairview?
Yes.
Definitely not a whiteout, that's for sure.
I mean, I think it's unfair to act like that's what it would look like to the naked eye.
McCabe, you recognize whereabouts in the town of Canton this suspected.
I love how the judge lets it just sit up there on the thing for the spot.
Yes, that is Cassie. We just passed Cassie's Corner Store, and that is Chapman Street.
Canton PD gets their windshield wipers the same place they get their Solo cups. Dollar store. Bob, will you come join us already? What are you doing, Bob? The Wizard of Bob behind us.
Yeah, babe, just come. He wanted me to get on, so I guess that's why he got off. So there was 3 of us because I was like, "You guys don't need me if there's, you know."
No, so we can have 4 of us. Come on, Bob, get on here.
Are you
Come on, babe.
sure?
Yes.
Yeah, we're sure. Plus, you're much more entertaining than me.
That's not true.
There
he is.
I was having fun back there, though. You know? To really concentrate on appropriate moments to play the clip.
You were killing it with that.
It's fun behind the scenes, man. All right, so while we're taking this long drive, here's my thing. So it never dawns upon Jen McCabe to be looking at the area where she last fucking saw the Lexus. Like, really? Is anybody like it never dawned on her?
You recognize
looking at the last place that she saw the Lexus.
Yes.
Good point.
This is the top of Fairview.
So
Top
this will be
Fairview.
Chapman coming on to Fairview, is that correct?
Correct.
Prior to that, along that ride along Chapman, is that the period of time you're looking out the window and trying to see if you can see John on the side of the road?
Yes, but we didn't drive that way.
You came from the other direction?
Yes.
You would have been taking, instead of a right onto Fairview, you would have been taking a left onto Fairview?
Yes.
And, still maybe.
Jay, you're right about their windshield wipers. My God.
It's like
Garbage.
It's like, you know, and it's just so disingenuous how he uses this video.
Really
all
is.
to make us be thinking she could have never seen shit like that.
It does give that impression. It really does. But I mean, the defense isn't.
Well, but also, not only is the windshield not getting clean, you know, you're looking through a camera,
Right.
and
It's not
lights,
representative, like you said,
right?
of what the naked eyes.
There's your 6-foot black blob. It's the dirt on the windshield.
Blob. Lawn blob.
Now, what's up on the screen and what you just observed as far as the ride down Fairview, was that Tabernacle material consistent with what you observed in Ms. Roberts?
No.
Down that morning?
Absolutely
Yes.
not.
And at this point in time, as you're coming sort of down the hill from Fairview, is this the point that the conversation occurs as far as?
I can't believe the defense isn't objecting that this
A little bit.
video
more
is
towards the top
representative of
the
what
street.
they saw.
So Bell's mother lives more closer to the top by Chapman.
Midway down, yes.
Just go in if you could.
He stopped it that far ahead and said, "Is that where she saw him? What just happened there?" No, I guess not.
The vehicle in the roadway there, do you recognize that?
Yes,
And what do you recognize that to be?
Miss Roberts.
Just for clarification purposes, with the laser pointer, if you could direct the jury's attention where you see Ms. Roberts.
Oops.
Now, the area where you observed Mr. O'Keefe, can you see that in this particular pause frame of the video?
Not in this frame, I cannot. It's not clear.
Just tell me if you could. See that area now?
Yes.
Good, using the laser pointer, just direct the jury's attention where. I was coming if you could play this for.
Do we have a problem? Does he do what? Does he what? Huh?
If you could, fast forward just about. Right. Right. And the boss. Okay, do you recognize any of the individuals up on that screen?
Yes.
And if you could, with the laser pointer, direct the jury's attention. Who do you recognize and who do you recognize that?
Carrie Roberts, myself, Karen Reed.
Okay. Tell me you can take that. Now, Ms. McCabe, if I could just take you back to when you arrived there, communicated Ms. Reed goes over to Mr. O'Keefe, Ms. Roberts. What is it that you were doing at that time?
I got out of the car and I came around, and for a second or two, I completely just froze. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And then Carrie and I made eye contact, and I called 911.
Are you
and
sure?
Carrie was asking me to go to the car and get, she was yelling to get towels or blankets or something out of the back of our car.
Is that why the back of the car is opened up in the video that we just saw in reference to Ms. Roberts' vehicle?
Yes.
Did she direct you sort of where to go within the vehicle to find the blankets, towels, whatever it was?
Yes.
You called 911, you spoke to the operator and told them essentially where you were, correct?
Yes.
Now, as far as that initial, what you saw, that you froze and couldn't believe what you saw, can you describe to the jury what it was that you saw?
I saw Carrie wiping the snow off of John's face, and I could not believe that that was John laying there.
And how was John positioned, or how was his body positioned when you saw him?
He was just laying flat on his back.
And as far as the snow Ms. Roberts was wiping off his face, was there any other snow on his body at that time?
Yes.
If you know about how much?
There was enough that his body was covered in snow.
And could you tell at that point how far Mr. O'Keefe was from the roadway as far as Fairview Road was concerned?
I mean, I remember kind of a little ways in. I don't know exactly.
And so you make that call to 911, and what is sort of going on with respect to Ms. Roberts, the defendant, and Mr. O'Keefe while you're on that 911?
So I run the blankets over to Miss Roberts, and she's kind of lifts him up, put the blankets underneath him, and she's screaming at Miss Reed to get off of Mr. O'Keefe. And they're kind of yelling back and forth. Karen screaming, "Is he dead? Is he dead?" I, at some points, walk over towards the car, Carrie's car, to get away because they're so loud. And I was trying to be calm and get help there for John as fast as possible.
All right, so she's, and I was just going to say, like, this, whatever this emotional thing that she's showing on the stand belies what you hear in the 911. I'm fully expecting the defense to impeach her. If she's going to sit here and act like she's emotional now, she sounded like a robot during this 911 call. She keeps casting shade on Karen Reed for screaming, like she's hysterical. You know, it's like I don't. It's like this move by her in terms of how she's characterizing how Karen Reed has been reacting this whole time is irritating me. Like, to be honest with you, it's making it seem as if she's got something to hide to me. But again, that's me kind of knowing all the backstory. I don't know how it's playing with the jury. I hope that they play the audio from her 911 call that she's discussing right now.
And, you know, just to mention, I think that's why she's prefacing it right now, that she wanted to get away from the screaming, yelling, because her plan, I was intent on being very calm on my 911 call. Like, she just kind of.
That's what I'm saying. She just like laid the groundwork to explain how
her
she
robotness. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And what did they refer to her with, Matt? Like, she's chaos. What was it that they said? Like, she gets very calm. They even preface it with her husband, didn't they? Like, where she's chaos. I forget what the term was, but like that she gets very calm during those times. Right.
Exactly.
Sure.
In crisis mode. That in crisis
mode. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Carrie starts yelling about doing CPR. She tells Karen to do mouth to mouth. Karen's yelling because as they start, blood starts coming out of John's mouth.
As far as the CPR, that's what you're talking about?
Yes.
So during this time, the defendant's yelling and you're on the phone with 911, correct?
Yes.
So you're trying to back up or distance yourself a little bit so that you can hear what's going on with the 911 operator and they can hear you.
Yes.
And after you complete that 911 call, what's going on with that?
I go over, and at that point, Carrie asks if I can take over doing the compressions.
And did you do that?
I did, yes.
And at some point after you call 911, to either police or fire or someone responds and arrives on scene, is that correct?
Yes.
You know about how much time it was in between when you hung up with 911 and when the first responders started to arrive?
From when I hung up, maybe a few minutes. I'm not exactly sure.
It's her sniffling.
And do you recall whether or not it was police or fire or who showed up?
Oh.
Yes. She's crying.
Is that the
It's her tearless
that
crying.
video or that cruiser that was just up on the screen as last?
I didn't see the officer, in the video, but I know it was Officer Sarif was the first officer to arrive.
So then, after the officer arrives, what happened?
He was trying to figure out what had happened. Karen just ran around screaming my name, Carrie's name. Is he dead? Is he dead? It was on repeat. Could I have hit him? Did I hit him? More officers started to arrive. The EMTs, they began to work on him.
And while by him, you mean Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes,
And Mr. O'Keefe's still on the ground and they're working on him there, is that correct?
yes.
Did you see anything about sort of what they were doing or what was going on with that?
No, I just saw a bunch of them around Mr. O'Keefe.
And then what happened then?
More officers began to arrive. Miss Reed just continued to run around screaming. As more officers and EMT arrived, they asked what happened. One EMT asked,
It's killing me. Like, why doesn't she fix her
one
tooth?
EMT had asked, his name, his age, things like that. If she knew what happened, Miss Reed stated that she hit him. Besides running around saying, I hit him, did I hit him, could I have done this? Is he dead? Is he dead? At one point, one of the police officers put Miss Reed in the back of her cruiser, and he asked for myself to go over with her, and Carrie came over with us as well.
I'd like to just take you back to when the paramedic is asking for information, biographical information, things like that. You indicated that the defendant said, I hit him, is that correct?
Yes.
That's something that you said once or more than once?
3 times. I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Now, before you had made reference to statements she made with sort of qualifiers or questions as far as could I have hit him or did I hit him? Is that what she said at that time when she was speaking to the paramedic?
No, she was earlier. It was could I, did I? When she spoke to the paramedic, it was crystal clear. I hit him.
Now, one of the officers takes her over to the back of a cruiser, is that right?
Yes.
You were over in that area as well?
Yes.
Who, if anyone else, was over in that area?
Miss Roberts.
And while you were over in that area, what was going on over there?
We were in the back of the police cruiser. Karen was sitting in there. I kind of scooched myself in. Miss Roberts came over. Karen grabbed our hands. She asked us to pray. She looked at her hands and she had blood. She asked us if she could have gotten her period. We told her no, that was John's blood. Then she said, what if he's dead? Promise me you'll take care of the kids. Someone's going to take care of the kids. Then we prayed. Then at the end, they were moving John. And at that point, Karen told Carrie, go over, look, is he dead? Is he dead? Is he dead? Over and over. And Carrie said, I'll go over and check on him. And she was yelling, are they working on him? And then at that point, she grabbed my hands and she said, Google hypothermia, Google how long it takes to die in the cold. And so I had my phone out and it was cold and my hands were frozen and I have MS and I took my phone out while she was screaming and shaking my arm and I attempted to Google how long does it take to die in the cold.
Are you sure?
Wow, that was a long explanation.
Yeah.
When you conducted that search, that was at the defendant's request on scene sometime after 6 a.m. on that day, correct?
Yes.
You recall whether or not that came up as far as your search in Google? Is it something that you typed once or more than once?
I believe I did it multiple times because as I was typing it, I don't know what else was coming up. She was screaming. My hands were shaking.
Oh, it was Karen's fault, the typo.
And do you recall anything as far as what the search results were, or did you click on anything, or did you get an answer to the question the defendant had posed to you?
I don't even think I got an answer because as I kept Googling and she kept yelling and then they were moving John. And the next thing I knew, we were kind of moving because she wanted to see if they were working on him.
And so you were moving along with the defendant over towards where Mr. O'Keefe had gone to the back of the ambulance.
Yes, we kind of just moved to see what was going on.
When you moved over, what did you see then?
They were just putting him in the back of the ambulance.
Now, after Mr. O'Keefe was put into the back of the ambulance, where did you go then? What did you do?
At that point, different police officers, I believe, were arriving, and they were asking questions about what happened.
And did you speak to those officers?
I did, yes.
And at that point, did you know what happened?
No, to be honest, it was like I was there, but everything was just going on, and I was completely just in a state of shock and disbelief.
And that sort of period there, how long did that go on?
So I talked to a few officers. We tried to just give them, he didn't come home. We went out looking for him, kind of just the brief overview. And then one of the police officers asked me to go into the house and to wake up my sister and my brother-in-law.
Oh, the police told her to go in the house?
At some point while you were outside,
Did any of them say
did you
that?
try to contact your sister and your brother-in-law?
I believe I called my sister, Nicole.
And when was that in relation to everything as far as medically that was going on with Mr. O'Keefe and all?
I think I might have called her right after I got off with 911 possibly. And then, she didn't answer. And that's when I was walking over, I believe, to John.
And she didn't answer the call when you called her initially?
No.
And you recall calling either your sister Nicole or your brother-in-law Brian Albert prior to going into the house?
I don't recall. I know I did call Nicole at one point. I'm not sure if I called Brian or not.
Regardless of if you called or you didn't call, do you recall having any sort of phone conversation with either Nicole or Brian Albert before you went in the house?
No.
So you at least called your sister Nicole, she didn't answer, and then one of the officers directed you to wake them up.
Yes.
And when you went up to the house at 34 Fairview, how did you get in?
The front door.
And front door was unlocked?
Yes.
Is that typical from your experience at that residence?
Yes.
And so you went to the house, and where did you go?
I went up the stairs to their bedroom.
And the bedroom door, when you arrived there, was it open or closed or something?
Closed.
And you opened it?
Yes.
And when you opened it, who, if anyone, did you see in the room, and what were they doing?
I saw my sister and Brian, and they were both asleep.
And you familiar with a dog that they have?
Yes.
What was the dog's name?
Chloe?
Was Chloe in the bedroom as well at that time?
I don't recall.
You come in, they're both sleeping, and what happened then?
I go over to the bed, and I'm calling out their names.
And how long were you calling out their names before you got any kind of response?
Brian responded first, and he was very, startled and looked at me like, what is going on? Nicole took a little, and, I think it took Nicole a little bit longer than Brian to wake up.
And what is it that you're telling them as you're coming into the room and they're waking up?
I'm telling them that we just found John out front, and I could have possibly said, John has died. We just found John out front. They were very confused. At one point, I think Brian was like, who's John? I mean, they'd just woken up and they had no idea what I was talking about.
Now, as far as when they're first waking up and you're explaining to them, how would you describe sort of their demeanor as you're talking?
They were both shocked. I think they thought, like, why?
That's not what you think they thought.
Okay.
So what I'm asking them is just sort of when you observe them, how would you describe your physical observations of what they look like, their demeanor in that respect?
Shocked, confused, not understanding.
Strike the last one.
Now, as far as this conversation that you're having with your sister and your brother-in-law in their bedroom. How long was that going on for?
A few minutes at least.
And then following that, where did you go?
They got up, got dressed, and then we walked down the stairs.
And when you got to the bottom of the stairs, what, if anything, did you see when you got?
There was a police officer at the bottom of the stairs.
And do you know who that police officer is?
Yes, Officer Lank.
At that time, did you know who that police officer was?
I did, yes.
How did you know?
He's from Canton. He was, I don't know, 5 years older than me. I knew him kind of growing up, who he was, and met him through the years.
You're aware of who he was?
Yes.
And were there any other officers with him initially?
No.
Now, before you go into the house, do you know where Ms. Roberts and the defendant were, or what they were doing when you went to the house?
I believe they put Karen in a car, and
Only if you know. Only if you.
Okay.
If you know. Do you know?
Karen was in a car. Kerry was walking all around.
Now, as far as the ambulance with Mr. O'Keefe, at the time that you go into the house, was that ambulance still there?
I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it had left.
And when you come downstairs with your sister and your brother-in-law, and the officer's there, you have a conversation, is that correct?
Yes.
Where did that first conversation occur?
In the hallway, and then into the kitchen.
And from there, you mentioned that there was Officer Lank at one point. Were there any other officers that joined that conversation at some point?
Hours later, yes.
And so during that initial conversation, you're talking to the officer, who, if anyone else, not what they said, but who, if anyone else, is speaking to the officer?
Brian and Nicole.
The conversation initially with the officer, you know about how long that went on?
I don't. A few minutes.
And following that conversation, what did you do, or what happened?
My husband arrived.
And had you called him?
Yes.
And when had you called him?
I called him when I was walking in the house to wake up my sister and Brian.
So as you're walking in, you call your husband Matt, and then he arrives at some point after you're done talking to the officer, or while you're talking to the officer?
The officer was still in the house, yes.
And so in that vein, as far as when your husband comes in, the officer's there, correct?
Yes.
Did you see your husband talking to the officer as well?
Yes, the officer asked him to step outside or step to the side, and they spoke.
And then what happened then?
The officer told me to stay.
Hello, that. I told you to stay.
The officer told me to stay, and that he said that the state police would be coming to talk to me.
So you stayed at the house at 34 Fairview, is that right?
Yes.
You know where Ms. Roberts and the defendant?
Yes, Carrie came up and she had told me that she.
Not what she told you. Next question, Mr. Mayor.
At some point, did you see Ms. Roberts and the defendant go?
Yes, to pick up John's parents.
I'll strike that.
And as far as they left in Ms. Roberts' car, is that right?
Correct.
Ms. Roberts was again driving.
Correct.
And at some point, did you observe them come back to the house?
Yes.
About how long was it between the time they left and the time they came back?
5 minutes, approximately.
And after they came back to the house, what, if any, other activity did you see outside as far as first responders?
I was in the house, so I didn't see Miss Roberts pull back up.
You were in the house for most of the rest of the time that you were there, is that correct?
Correct.
How long were you there that morning waiting for the state police?
I believe I left approximately 11:30.
During the time that you were there, you're there, your sister Nicole Albert's there, your brother-in-law Brian Albert's there, and your husband Matthew McCabe's there, correct?
Correct.
And Was there anybody else that arrived at some point over the course of the morning while you were there at the house?
Yes.
And who was that? And if you know about what time was it that they arrived?
Julie Albert.
Now, with reference to when Julie Albert arrived, at some point around that time, did you have occasion to look out and see sort of what was going on outside?
No.
Were you aware whether or not there were any police or fire or anything that was still there at the time that Miss Julie Albert arrived?
There wasn't.
And she comes in the house, and at some point, I'm assuming she's informed of what had transpired there before her arrival, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
And when she's informed of that, what, if anything, did you observe about her demeanor or how she reacted?
Shocked.
Now, in addition to Julie Albert, who, if anyone else, was at the house that morning while you were there?
Officer Lank and Gallagher were there. And Brian Higgins came that morning.
And do you know how Brian Higgins came to know, or how Brian Higgins came to be there that morning? Did you know?
Our group,
I don't know.
Our big group.
Now, you mentioned that Officer Lank came back to the house, is that right?
Yes.
That was after some period of time when he had left?
Yes.
He came back with another officer named Gallagher, is that right?
Yes.
And why did they come back to the house?
Because I called Officer Lank.
And did you have his number, or how did you get his number if you did?
Julie Albert gave it to me.
Are you
So you called
sure?
Officer Lank, he then comes back to the house on Fairview, is that right?
Yes.
And when he came back, why had you asked him to come?
Well, as I was sitting there and I was waiting for the state police to come, I was slowly trying to piece together what had just happened in the last couple of hours. And he had told me, if there's anything that you remember, if you remember anything, please, give me a call.
And so there was something that you remembered and you gave him a call.
Yes.
All right.
When he
What was
came
it?
back to the house, what was it that you told him?
I told him about the comments and the remarks that Karen Reed had been stating that morning.
And specifically, what type of remarks are you referring to that you told Officer Lank when he came back?
I said that she told one of the EMTs that she hit him.
Now, at some point, you indicated that you left the house on Fairview, is that right?
Yes.
And with your husband, I presume?
Yes.
And where did the two of you go?
We went home.
And your children were still there without either you or your husband there, is that correct?
Yes.
And once you arrived back home, what is it that you did at that point?
We went in the house and Officer Proctor was coming over to speak with us.
And that Officer Proctor, is that someone that you knew previously or had ever met?
I had never met Officer Proctor.
Did he come alone or was he with someone else?
He had another officer with him.
You know who that officer is?
Yes, Yuri Buchanan.
And have
She
you ever
can
met,
say it right.
Yuri Buchanan.
No.
When you get home,
She's snickering.
about how long was it at the time from when you arrived home with your husband to the time that the officers from the state police came back?
It was pretty quick.
Now, in addition to the officers from the state police, did anybody else come over to your house on that day, late morning, early afternoon?
Yes, my brother-in-law, Brian.
And do you know why he came over that?
Yes, he came over. I had asked him, he's like a big brother to me, and I was all shaken up and nervous and overwhelmed, and so I wanted his support.
And he obliged you and came over, correct?
Yes.
Now, at some point after the officers from the state police came over, you spoke to them, is that correct?
Yes.
And do you recall where in your home you spoke to them?
In my dining room.
Now, when you spoke to them, was it both of the officers that were present?
Yes.
And was there anybody else present in the dining room when you were talking?
No.
And as far as your husband or your brother-in-law, Brian, do you know where in the house they were when you were in the dining room?
Yes, they were in my bedroom.
And at some point later on that day, those same officers talked to both your husband and your brother-in-law, Brian.
Yes.
And during each of those respective conversations or interviews, do you know where you were in the house when those were going on?
In my bedroom.
And when you were in your bedroom, could you hear anything that they were saying downstairs in the dining room?
No.
I may have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
May have a moment to see if I have dragged this out long enough.
For
that there'll
7
be-
more minutes.
That
Can
will
I
have
bring
no
up the
cross
picture
today.
of the house one more time, please? That's as usual. I'm going to show you an image on the screen.
Well, you really should keep going another 7 minutes. So wait, they stop at 4? At 3?
Yep.
At 4.
Yep.
Right. Well, 3 for me, right?
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Bob, I forgot. What did you ask if they were going to front that he probably hasn't fronted yet? Didn't you ask if he was going to front something? I'm sure he has it.
The Google search. I mean, they
Oh,
kind
well,
of
actually, he did. They did bring that up. They did bring that up.
Yeah.
with a very thorough explanation.
Yeah, guys, no court Monday. I'm finding out today that we'll be back on Tuesday.
So I
apparently.
just wanted to say that if she had searched, oh no, wait, never mind, because she didn't find out that he was missing until 5 a.m. or something.
I'm showing you 2 separate pages. Just ask you to look at each of them and then their reference.
Okay.
The text messages.
I'm not sure why no court Monday, and I think the week after they only have like court Tuesday because remember it was like Mondays
Memorial Day,
and I think they just have a Tuesday. I think they said they were off the rest, not next week, the week after.
Right.
But there's no court this coming Monday.
Apparently, yeah. I don't know why. Maybe it's like a Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah, Dunkin' Donuts.
Do you recognize each of those documents and what the content is?
Yes.
And those are essentially, one contains text messages that morning of the 29th between yourself and Miss Reed, correct?
Yes.
And the other one is sort of the list of phone calls between yourself and Miss Reed from that morning as well.
Yes.
Now, before I get into those, as far as after you had gone inside the house and Miss Reed had got into Miss Roberts' car, what if any other communication or what if any other communication did you have with Miss Reed that morning?
I texted her asking for Carrie's phone number because I didn't have it. And I also had a phone conversation with Karen when she was in the ambulance.
And that text communication that I placed before you essentially has one bubble on it, and that's you asking for Carrie Roberts' number.
Correct.
And the phone conversation that you had with the defendant, when was that, and you know where the defendant was at the time that you spoke?
Well,
Yes, she was in an ambulance.
And if you could describe to the jury sort of what, generally speaking, what was the content of that conversation? What did the two of you talk about?
She just was repeating, asking if he was dead. Is he dead? She brought up the kids, and then she also asked if I would visit her.
And how did you respond?
I said yes.
Now, following that phone conversation, did you have any further communication in any form that you can recall with the defendant?
No.
Bob has learned the sound effects, and it will never be the same.
Objections to Jackson?
No objection on
you have all these sound effects loaded at your disposal now?
Yeah, Jay.
They've always been there, but Bob now has learned how to use
Oh, my Lord.
By the way, yes, folks, Monday is an observance of Ben Affleck's divorce. That's why there's no court on Monday.
Poor Ben. Guy gets a rough ride. I don't think it's warranted. I love Ben Affleck. I don't care what nobody says. Your situation for you would be concurrently improved if I had $20 in my back pocket.
I think it was 200.
I think it was too.
Just a couple more questions, ma'am. Now,
Might
you
have
had
been.
asked the defendant, Ms. Reed, for Ms. Roberts' information because you didn't have it, correct?
Correct.
At some point, did you receive that information from the defendant?
No.
And did you receive that information from any other source?
I must have, but I don't recall how.
And as far as asking for Ms. Roberts' information, why were you asking?
She was on the way to pick up John's parents and to bring him to the hospital. And I wanted to check in on them and then further updates from Kerry about John and how he was.
Are you sure?
You wanted to know how your friend was doing, correct?
Yes.
Hmm.
No further questions for this witness. Your Honor.
It took it right to the last minute.
I don't think I can get it done in 4 minutes.
All right, jurors, I'm going to, we're not in session on Monday.
12
So we'll
minutes.
come back Tuesday morning. So Tuesday will be a half a day. Someday next week, I might ask you to think about maybe revising some of these Tuesday, Thursdays to longer days. But I'll give you plenty of notice of that. I need to make sure that I'm just asking you to think about it. All right, so please, those same cautions, do not discuss this case with anyone. Don't do any independent research or investigation into this case. If you happen to see, hear, or read anything about this case, please disregard it and leave everything here, literally, figuratively. Clear your heads and we'll see you fresh Tuesday.
So, I mean, that's pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. What do you guys think? What do you guys think
about that testimony?
Yeah, I mean,
much of it seems like it could be true. I mean, I can't make heads or tails of this or these people. I'll tell you the honest to God truth.
I just think on Tuesday with Ajax, it's going to be a spectacle. It's going to be some must see TV. It's going to be interesting to see how that. There was a lot there, obviously. Like you said, Bob, the Google search. I mean, there's going to be a lot.
So I'm going to go back to her husband's testimony, and I wasn't watching it live while you guys were doing it, so I never saw that you like went back a couple times to listen again. But and I also don't know if maybe you resolved this already, but I had brought it up while Bob, you were hiding behind the scenes. But he did go out of his way to say he was looking out the window. So they set the question up. And what did you see? Karen Reed's car. So the way the question went, it seemed like he was saying he saw the taillight. But when he continues to speak, he says something like, I assumed when like the taillight was broken that it was out. And so I didn't want her driving around like that. So it implies that he had not actually seen it, but he was referring back to the conversation where Karen Reed said my taillight was broken. And maybe what he was saying was, I looked out the window, I saw she was driving her car as opposed to some other car. And so I was concerned because I had previously learned, without all those extra words, that is actually an equally fair interpretation of what he was saying, that he was actually not saying that he saw the taillight with his eyes.
My babe is agreeing with you.
Yeah, and that's why I was saying I put that comment up. I mean, it's everything like that is left to interpretation of every individual juror on that jury. You know what I'm saying? It's like we saw it here in the chat. I mean, it was not clear.
No, they lined it up like he was literally saying he saw it with his eyes. And we all initially interpreted it that way. I mean, it sounded like I did, you did, and it sounded like Sonny did as well from playing it back. And it was just a bad setup by the
Lally.
prosecution.
Right. And Lally like should have made it clear by asking the follow-up question, when you looked out the window, did you see the tailgate or the tail
Right,
light?
taillight.
Real simple. But he didn't do that.
I mean, which
So,
is just,
it got left floating out there,
it's just a theme of his entire, like, I hate to, it's people are confused. Witnesses are confused. We're confused. He does not put things in a matter that's linear, where I think the jury has any idea of what the hell is going on half the time, maybe even more than that. It's just hard to get where he's going.
And
Oh, Ellen, thank you for the $1 million Dutch mark. I appreciate that. Is it really a good idea to give the defense extra long time to prepare a cross? I mean, typically, no.
But their whole point is they want to get their thing done because sometimes, as you can tell, like it's more often that when you bounce off of a direct, you're picking up on some of the last things and you're like, adjusting maybe your intended cross to kind of touch on some of the very last things that were said, and that can help get momentum. So the prosecution wants to finish and then let the jurors just have that all weekend with nothing in their minds to percolate, to think, well, I don't know if I believe that person anymore. They want it, because you also think, well, should they have left it hanging so that they could come back in case they thought of any questions over the weekend? I don't think the judge was going to allow for that. She would have just kept going.
Yeah, I know, Ellen. I remember last time you gave a holla. I was all excited, and Jay's like, "Yeah, that's
15 is very generous as well.
It's super generous."
But Bob did know that it wasn't.
I did. I was kidding about the Dutch marks. So yeah, like as far as that goes, I don't know if there's still something going on here.
Courts on life
seems
support.
like it because they're playing that music.
Yeah, I don't know.
The
if
washout.
Further argument.
I think it just ended.
All rise for the court, please.
Goodbye.
And to your point, Allie, I like that. Of course, is what the state wants to do, is have them thinking about like some final. I just don't think after today they're like have an idea of what to think. Maybe I'm wrong. I just there's so much. I don't know,
Dude. No, you're not wrong. You're right on time. Like you're everyman, right? I mean, you're looking at it from the perspective of like, okay, this is what I've heard thus far. Like you said yesterday, man, it just has not been like a linear line in terms of the state's case in chief here. It's like everything that they put on, like this is really, look at it. That guy was wearing quite a suit, just so you guys know. It's like
Sonny come back or no? She's still
they're I think Sonny might be dealing with some other stuff. Like she's been off for a hot minute. I know she had some issues going on. But it's like you just never know. Like Jen is the first person that ever really kind of like gets it to the jury that Karen is responsible for it. And it's like her demeanor the entire time was, like she decides to not focus on the, it's all annoying and obnoxious when she's screaming, did I do it? Did I hit him? All that stuff. But it becomes super pertinent, so much so that she feels that she needs to call Proctor or whoever she called. I can't remember who should know, Lank, and say, oh, by the way, she said, I hit him. It's like, those conversations that are going on. And, it's like you have her asking for Kerry Roberts' number. Yeah, I just don't know how it's playing out to the jury.
I'm still thinking about the black box. Like, isn't that going to answer all the questions?
Seems like it would.
Well, someone had put in the chat that it doesn't record a crash until you're at 25 miles per hour. So the Commonwealth putting it at like precisely 21 or 24, whatever it was that they said, took them right out
How
of the
would they
range.
know? How would they know?
From my experience, that seems high. From cases I've handled, like it's usually like a minimal impact. But I mean, I feel like, well, maybe I don't know, maybe that's true. But that seems like a really like. Cause think about just any accident you get into.
Yeah.
Like that
Well,
seems
Jay,
really high.
what's
I
some of
agree
the
with
other things
Jay.
that they record? Do they record backing up, going forward, on a
What-
drive, period?
I think so. Yeah, I think they do. Yeah.
What happens if your sensors are just activating? I mean, that would be a lot, you know. 'Cause
On
our
Murdoch, it
sensors
seemed that
go
they
off.
could tell when he farted in his car.
Right. I mean, it did, like, yeah, like Murdoch was everything, you know, like he reached over and, you know, grabbed a cool cigarette out of his glove box that he secretly hid when he was high on meth. You know, so it was like I agree. I'm dying to know like what they have from the vehicle. They have to have intel from the vehicle. They have to. And I agree with Jay. I mean, Jay, most accidents that you probably came across your desks were below 10 miles an hour, where people are
Soft
cramming on
tissue
their
every
brakes.
time. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Soft tissue, like neck and back, shoulder.
Right.
I mean, the more serious ones are more, but yes, absolutely. Those ones are not huge impacts.
And they're at relatively low rates of speed, which, you know, if they're going to make, you know, these like computers be able to keep this data, probably with litigation in mind, you know, I mean, we can't pretend that that's not something that was in the minds of, okay, why would they make it at such a high rate of speed to like wash out probably what's a majority of fender benders, you know, because usually people are like, holy shit, like they're not paying attention, they're texting, whatever they're doing, and then they realize they're about to ram the car in front of them, and they're cramming on their brakes. It's too late, but it's still like a slower rate of speed impact, you know, typically. So
you know what? Just oh, sorry.
No, I was done.
One thing that just occurred to me that came up in this testimony with Jen McCabe is they started talking about her like asking, this is after the impact, this is when she's going to look for John, right? They start talking about the jealousy, right? But that's after. So it's not like that she knew that before, because at first my thought is it's a frantic woman who is wondering what's going on. This is after with the jealous that they're trying to, it seems like, get this jealousy stuff out. So if it's after, where's the murder? Where's the intention? If you told me maybe that happened before they had something, where's the murder? Where's like this? Where is anyone saying that she meant to do this? Like afterwards, she's like, oh, maybe she's there. And who's that woman? Not before it happened, right? Am I wrong? Did I get the timeline wrong?
No, you're absolutely
right. Like that, and if she's still worrying about the women he might be with, I mean, that's the kind of like thing that you're not pre-planning to fake, like, because it definitely seems like she's like, well, it was basically a whiteout. So if the picture that at least I think this witness was trying to paint, and that the Commonwealth was trying to paint through this witness, was that Karen Reed knew all along she had hit him, which is why she could see the body was there even during a whiteout, and why she beelined it directly to, as though she knew it was there. And I think it's what I get the sense that this is what all the people who believe Karen Reed is guilty think, that she always knew where he was. So if all of it's a fake, that's the kind of small detail, a woman thinking he could possibly be at the home of another woman, that is not, it just doesn't seem natural to be a part of your lie, you know, like.
So you're saying that I agree. If you're saying that if she intentionally killed her boyfriend
and or knew he was dead already, actually knew it happened,
right? Like she is not in the state of mind, based on everything that I've seen, in order to cook up, to think 3 steps ahead, like, oh
yeah,
I'm going to act like, oh, is it possible that he's at either one of his ex-girlfriend's houses? Like that
doesn't make
it doesn't make sense.
And to just be screaming people's names over and over again, it's like, if you're putting on a whole song and dance, maybe you're going to come up with something better than just screaming Jen or Carrie at the top of your lungs.
Right. I mean, it should, like, in my thing, like, in all honesty, one of my biggest takeaways, and it's always been this, is that we know that Jen McCabe knew that they were out front. She's testified that she knows where the location of the vehicle was the last time she saw it. They're driving all around town, looking at all of these different places, and you're going to have me believe that she
It
has
didn't
no
dawn on her.
clue.
Right.
It didn't dawn on her that, oh, I should probably be looking around John's yard as we're making an approachal. Like, it's bullshit, man. It's like, I'm not buying that, and they're trying to have that be cast in the fact that, Karen knows where he is as soon as they pull up, that she spots him where he's unspottable. Like no one could possibly have seen him. Like, what? Like, why aren't you looking? You're like the last one that, like, she's already told you she didn't even remember being there. But yet you're not keeping an eagle eye out when you're passing the property where he was last known to be at. I'm calling bullshit on it. I'm just am.
It seems like every day we end up with more reasonable doubt. I don't know. It just seems like we think of a new thing that's reasonable doubt.
Yeah, and look, man. I mean, this could all turn abruptly when we get to what Allison's talking about. When we get the black box data, because that's going to change my mind far more than their ME. Like, their ME sounds like, they were, suggested as to what happened before the autopsy starts by law enforcement who are sitting in there observing. It's like that is not abnormal for law enforcement to be in there asking questions or to say, all right, this is what we think happened with this guy, prior to the autopsy starting. I mean, like, that suggestion or more. I mean, we have no idea. We'll never know because no one's going to admit any conversations that may have taken place with the ME prior to the autopsy starting, but like, we're going to know that they were in there. Like, that's going to be fertile ground for, Yannetti or Jackson, whoever's going to do the cross of the ME, whether or not, law enforcement was there from the get. Did they suggest what may have happened to John O'Keefe prior to the autopsy starting? Because that plants the seeds. It's all about planting seeds. It's much like, I saw a comment and I thought it was very astute. I don't know who made it. I meant to throw it up there, that Jen McCabe seemed to be planting seeds in Karen's mind all the way through this thing, and if you're of this mindset that this thing possibly could have gone down in the house, I mean, you're not going to feel any less like that after that testimony. Like, I was in a chat with Mac and Josh, like, while this was going on, and Josh was like, oh, well, not Joshua Ritter. I'm talking about Josh Schiffer, and he's like, in the beginning of it, he's like, she's solid. Like, and I looked at it and it was like, that was early on in the direct. And I'm like, well, let's see how she holds up on cross. And I said, she comes off as a bit cold to me. And then Max says, very cold, crazy facial expressions too. So
which could be the MS.
It could be. And I got in actually a really informative, interesting email from a sub from both of us, Jay. And I don't, Dr. Luann, and she had said, I'm going to read it because it's worth hearing. She said, I was educated in Chicago and Milwaukee, in that area at the Rosalind Franklin University of Medicine and Science in North Chicago and Medical College in Wisconsin. I've been an expert witness almost all plaintiff and brain injury cases over the years. I've been following the Karen Reed trial with you and Jay, sub to both channels. Smile, smile. Thank you very much. Karen Reed has MS, multiple sclerosis, which is a central nervous system disease. That means her brain is not right. It is totally why she's screaming and screaming and emotional.
I was going to ask that.
And repetitive. These people with MS are extremely cheap dates. Liquor affects them a lot. It doesn't take her much. It doesn't take much for them to be out of it. her memory problems too are totally related to MS on a little alcohol. Just wanted to put that out there for you to consider and maybe discuss, because I know the defense doesn't have to prove anything, but in my mind, the MS is a mitigating factor that explains her behavior, not extreme intoxication.
So, and I was actually thinking that, like, while Jen was testifying, because I'm like, why does she keep repeating everyone's name and they're describing it so phonetically? And I was thinking, could that be MS? And we have a friend with MS, and I clearly it affects everybody very differently, because I've never seen anything like that. She has more, like, she has difficulty walking and, you know, things like that, but I've never seen her, you know, like, even drunk, you know, get like that. So maybe that was, but I was definitely something I was thinking, like, could this be like a Tourette's kind of thing that's coming from, you know, the Tourette's, I mean, from the MS, either from the stress or from whatever. So it's really interesting, good
That's super,
information. And you would hope that the defense has somebody ready to get on and talk about that, because it's definitely explains, although I honestly don't even think it's such a big deal. So maybe not, because, like, okay, she's repeating names, like, she's really, really upset. Turning to
and honestly, like, from what I hear, and I think that Jen McCabe testified to it early on, that she also has MS.
Yes.
And so when you contrast her very stoic, calm behavior upon discovering John O'Keefe's body to Karen Reed's,
Well, that's why I'm saying it's very different, though. Like, think of our friend. She doesn't behave like that at all. So I think,
right, but I'm saying in terms of intense conditions, like I draw more in terms of Karen Reed's responses were genuine, as opposed to her, you know, kind of creating some act that, like, oh my God, like, she knew she did it. And this whole thing's been just a long act from 5 a.m, you know, all the way through, or whatever the voicemails covering her ass. Oh, I want to leave John a voicemail after just plowed him over. Here's my angry voicemail proving he's still alive. You know, I mean, it's
I think that the comment the person makes all good points, because even now, like, rethinking what I just said, it does explain that she wasn't necessarily, I mean, I don't understand how she gets so drunk, you know, where she still got alcohol in her system in the morning, but it does explain that her behavior is not because of alcohol, and it's not from drinking, and it's not, you know, if somebody wants to think it's for show, that it's not for show. So hopefully they do present something about that to give those options, you know, to the jury. And then on Creed's question, I haven't heard anything about them collecting the towels. Obviously, just like the clothes, that would have been, you know, important. And I don't expect that they actually did take those, or I think that we would have heard it. You know, and there, you know, whether there was taillight glass, I guess we will never know unless somehow they actually did collect it, but it doesn't seem like it. They did a lot of things, you know, wrong. And, you know, one of the other things was, like, you know, the taillight glass, you know, they've got some part of the car they're saying that there was hair stuck to,
yeah, I
but
mean,
no taillight on any part of the body.
No, it's long rumored that the state has evidence of a microscopic piece of the taillight in John O'Keefe's shirt. And yes, it's also been put out there that there's a hair that they're saying that was
Well,
found.
how's it in his shirt now when they didn't I thought they didn't collect the shirt.
Who knows? I mean, like,
They did swab and give some part to the tested for the DNA.
Yeah, I mean, who knows where they swabbed. Oh, and just for the record, so the last part of Dr. Luann's email I'm going to share. She says, I have a lot of thoughts to share with you on your slip and fall theory and the mechanics of that brain injury. I tend to agree with you, Dr. Luann. Cha-ching, another one on the Bob theory ledger. Something may have made him slip and fall. It may have been the dog jumping on him or just the conditions.
Or the pig.
And his condition
flying at him.
Vis-a-vis alcohol intoxication. I will share that with you perhaps in a more didactic email on John O'Keefe's injuries. I hope there's an ME on the stand at some point, which we know that there will be. I'm really interested in what the specifics of the head injuries are. So we got Dr. Luann out there. Like,
I mean, if a flying owl pig comes at you, that could definitely knock you off your feet.
I mean, the owl pigs, you got to watch out for them. They're vicious. Like, they're feral. They like eating humans, like all the things. Like, I mean, the owl thing is like, if you know anything about the like the staircase case with the Michael Peterson case, I mean, there are a lot of people that truly believe that in that case that an owl flew into the house and got to his wife on the stairs and then flew out of the house. This is merely, like the concept that, and it was really when Andrea.
We're not really suggesting it's an owl
pig, an owl pig. An owl pig. You're right. I'm not suggesting it's an owl pig. However,
but you're suggesting it might be an owl.
I'm suggesting it could be a wild animal of any kind, because of, like, I don't know if you were still on when Andrea was talking about this.
Could be
the way that they looked at we will find out whether or not those wounds are if they're post-mortem. If they're post-mortem, that changes everything, right? I mean, if they're made after, it almost has to be some kind of animal, because it's either if it's post-mortem, it didn't happen from the vehicle hitting him. Like, I've seen people say, oh, well, maybe you went under the car and something scratched him under the car. And, it's not Chloe in the house before he goes out, then it could be like, if that's the case, then I'm like, no one is getting me off.
Higgins plow.
I don't know. Maybe. I think I like the wild animal thing.
And I just, I put Dawn Burke's comment up there just because I didn't know if you had, made reference to it before. And thanks for your $10 there, Dawn. But that was what I was also responding to. The question was, if she hit him, wouldn't there be taillight pieces in his wounds? And we just touched on that. And I knew I saw the question somewhere, and that's where it was from.
See, look here. See, Akasha, when her parrot attacks her, comes at me claws first. I mean, it's coming. All right, y'all. It's been a fabulous Friday to our mods. Thank you.
Yes, I gotta say, Bob, when you say our mod, I don't even think people realize how quick they delete. There's been some stuff that's been, and they're just so good. So thank you, mods, for keeping this a place where that's like a safe place, because they are working overtime today. So thank you guys for all you do.
And I know now that Sonny's gone, so I can't say goodbye, but bye, Sonny. It was great.
Sonny, yes, I hope everyone is following Sonny on the replay crew. It'll be in the description. Make sure you're following Sonny. She's awesome. Hopefully she's okay. And
like, she clearly had something like for real come up.
Yeah.
So and I'm sure she extends her love and appreciation for all you hanging with us today. Jay, I love you, man. It's been a great day. Chat, you guys, per usual, amazing. We adore you. And if you're on Twitter, hey, make sure you like, subscribe, share on the way out. It's super helpful to all of us.
Yes.
Jay and I rely on you.
Up.
I mean, we rely on you guys more than you know. So we love you guys. We will see you. And Jay and I will figure out. I saw a suggestion about going to Buckethead's trial on Monday. Jay and I will figure it out over the weekend. If we're going to do it, we'll let you know. Jay and I might decide to, take the day off and relax. We'll play it by ear, but we'll let you guys know over the weekend for sure. We love you guys.
Love you,
Take
everybody.
Care.
Bye, everybody.
Everybody be good. Have wonderful weekends and be safe out there.
Option.